When I sold my accounting practice at 62, it saved me that I didn't tell my partner or his two sons that the $3.2 million sitting in my investment accounts was mine. And I did the right thing, because 6 months after we moved in together, his sons and my partner tried to convince me to sign documents that would have transferred everything into a family trust they controlled. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Helen, and I spent 34 years building something from absolute nothing. I started as a bookkeeper in a tiny office above a dry cleaner in Winnipeg in 1987. The kind of place where you could hear the steam presses through the floor and smell the cleaning chemicals every morning. I was 28, newly divorced, with 2 young daughters to support and exactly $340 in my bank account. I worked for that accounting firm for 6 years, learning everything I could. I took night classes. I studied for my CPA while my girls did their homework at the kitchen table beside me. When the owner retired in 1993, he offered to sell me the practice. The asking price was $45,000. I had $3,000 saved. The banks all said no, so I maxed out 3 credit cards, borrowed from my parents, and took on debt that terrified me, but I bought it. Do you understand what it takes to build something like that? To grow a client list from 37 small businesses to over 200? To hire staff? To survive recessions? To compete with the big firms that had resources I could only dream of? I worked 70-hour weeks for years. There were months I paid my employees, but not myself. During the 2008 financial crisis, I lost 15 clients in 2 months and had to let go of 2 staff members I'd worked with for over a decade. I cried in my office after they left, then went back to work because there was no other option. But I survived, more than survived. By 2015, my firm was one of the most respected in the province. We specialized in small business taxation and estate planning. I had 12 employees. We were turning away clients because we were at capacity. My daughters were grown, independent, successful. Sarah was a pharmacist in Toronto. Michelle was a civil engineer in Vancouver. They'd watched me build this business their entire lives. In 2022, at 60 years old, I received an offer I couldn't refuse. A national accounting firm wanted to acquire my practice. They offered $2.8 million, plus they'd keep all my staff and honor my commitment to my clients. I negotiated them up to $3.2 million. After taxes and paying off the last of my business debts, I netted just over $2 million, which I immediately invested conservatively. Between that and my other savings and retirement accounts, I was looking at a very comfortable retirement. I was proud, I was secure, and I was lonely. My ex-husband had remarried years ago. My daughters had their own lives. I dated occasionally over the years, but nothing serious. I'd been too focused on the business, on providing for my girls, on building something stable. Now, suddenly, I had time. I had resources. But I also had this caution, this wariness that came from spending 3 decades protecting what I'd built. I met Gerald at a charity fundraiser for the Winnipeg Humane Society in October 2023. He was 65, recently widowed, charming in that understated Canadian way. He told me about his late wife, Helen, who'd passed from cancer 2 years earlier. He'd been a high school teacher for 35 years, retired now. He seemed kind. He seemed genuine. He loved dogs, volunteered at the food bank, and had this warm laugh that made me feel comfortable. We started dating, nothing rushed. Coffee dates, walks along the Red River, dinners at quiet restaurants. He introduced me to his 2 sons after about 2 months. That's when I should have paid more attention. Owen was 42, the older son. He worked in commercial real estate in Calgary, or so he said. He had that overly confident manner, the kind of man who dominated conversations and talked about deals and investments constantly. He'd flown in for American Thanksgiving to visit Gerald, and we all had dinner together. "So, Helen," Owen said, cutting into his steak, "Dad mentioned you had your own business. What field?" "Accounting," I said simply. "I just sold my practice last year." His eyebrows raised. "Really? That's impressive. What kind of accounting?" "Small business taxation, estate planning, that sort of thing." "Must have been a good sale," he said, too casually. "If you don't mind me asking, did you sell to a competitor or a larger firm?" I felt Gerald shift beside me. "Owen, that's a bit personal, don't you think?" No, it's fine," I said. I'd learned long ago that the best way to deflect nosy questions was to give boring answers. I sold to a national firm. They were looking to expand in Manitoba. "And are you retired now? Or consulting?" "Fully retired," I said. "I'm enjoying having time to myself for the first time in decades." Owen nodded, but I could see his mind working. He asked a few more questions. How big was my firm? How many clients? Did I own the building or lease? I answered vaguely, giving him nothing concrete. The younger son, Philip, was 38 and lived in Winnipeg. He worked as a financial advisor at one of the big banks. He was quieter than Owen, but I noticed how carefully he listened to every word I said. When Gerald got up to help with dessert, Philip leaned forward. "Helen, if you ever need advice on managing your retirement funds, I'd be happy to help. No charge, of course. I'd consider it a favor to Dad." "That's kind of you," I said. "But I have advisors I've worked with for years. I'm quite comfortable with my arrangements." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Frustration? It was gone too quickly for me to be sure. Over the next few months, as Gerald and I grew closer, his sons became more present in our lives. Owen called frequently, always with questions masked as friendly interest. Philip would drop by Gerald's house when he knew I'd be there, always with some article about investment strategies or retirement planning that he thought might interest me. Gerald and I talked about moving in together in March 2024. We'd been dating for 5 months. He suggested I move into his house, a modest 3-bedroom in Street Vital that he owned outright. It made sense logistically. My condo was smaller, and I was renting. But I insisted on keeping my place, at least initially. Something made me want to maintain my independence, my escape route. I moved in with him in April. I paid half the utilities and groceries, but I kept my condo, kept my own bank accounts completely separate. Gerald never asked about my finances beyond casual conversation. He had his teacher's pension, some savings. He was comfortable but not wealthy. He seemed content with what he had, and he never showed any interest in what I might have. But his sons did. It started subtly. Owen visited in May, staying for a long weekend. On Saturday morning, Gerald went golfing with some old colleagues, and Owen and I had coffee together. "Helen, can I ask you something, just between us?" "Of course," I said, though warning bells were already ringing softly in my mind. "Have you and Dad talked about the future? About making things official?" "We're happy as we are," I said carefully. Of course. But at your age, at Dad's age, it's important to think about estate planning, about making sure you're both protected." "I appreciate the concern, Owen, but I spent 30 years doing estate planning for clients. I'm well aware of the considerations." He laughed. "Of course you are. I just meant, have you thought about updating your will? Making sure Dad is taken care of if something happens to you, or vice versa?" "My affairs are in order," I said evenly, "and I'm sure your father's are too. It's just, Philip and I worry about him. He's so trusting. We'd hate to see him in a vulnerable position." I looked at Owen directly. "A vulnerable position with whom?" He backpedaled immediately. "Oh no, I didn't mean anything by that. Just, you can never be too careful these days." But I knew what he'd meant. They were worried about me taking advantage of their father. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so insulting. In June, Philip invited Gerald and me to dinner at his house. His wife, Natasha, was there, along with their 2 young children. It was pleasant enough until after dinner, when Natasha took the kids upstairs and Philip pulled out a folder. "Dad, Helen, I wanted to talk to you both about something important." Gerald looked surprised. "What's this about?" "It's about protecting your assets. Both of you." He opened the folder and pulled out several printed articles about elder financial abuse, about protecting wealth in retirement, about the importance of family trusts. "I've been thinking," Philip continued, "that it might make sense for you both to consider setting up a family trust. It would protect your assets, provide tax benefits, and ensure that everything is handled properly if anything happens to either of you." "Philip," Gerald said slowly, "Helen and I aren't married. Why would we need a joint trust? You're living together. You're combining households. It's about protecting both of you. And frankly, Dad, you're 65. You should have had this set up years ago. I watched Philip carefully. And who would manage this trust? Well, ideally, it would be managed by family members. Owen and I could serve as trustees. We both have financial backgrounds. We'd make sure everything is handled properly. And what assets would go into this trust? I asked. All of them. Your retirement accounts, investments, property, everything. It provides legal protection. I set down my wine glass. Philip, I appreciate the thought, but I have no intention of putting my assets into any trust, especially not one managed by people I've known for 6 months. His smile tightened. I understand your hesitation, but this is really standard practice for people in your financial situation. And how would you know my financial situation? There was a beat of silence. Gerald was looking between us, confused. I just assumed, Philip said carefully, that after selling a successful business, you'd have substantial assets that need protection. My assets are already protected, I said. I have estate attorneys I've worked with for 20 years. Everything is exactly where it needs to be. Philip's wife came back downstairs then, and the conversation shifted, but the tension remained. In the car on the way home, Gerald apologized. I don't know what got into Philip. That was completely inappropriate. He's worried about you, I said. About us. It's understandable. But I was lying. It wasn't understandable. It was calculated. They thought they knew what I had, and they wanted to get their hands on it. July brought Owen back to Winnipeg, this time with papers of his own. He sat down with Gerald and me one evening and presented what he called a relationship agreement. It's like a prenup, but for people who are living together, he explained. It just outlines who owns what, who's responsible for what expenses, that sort of thing. I read through it carefully. It was 23 pages long, full of legal language. But what caught my eye was Section 7, Asset Disclosure. It required both parties to provide complete financial statements, including bank accounts, investment accounts, retirement funds, and property ownership. This seems excessive for a living arrangement, I said. It's for both your protection, Owen insisted. Look, I work with these kinds of agreements all the time in real estate. You'd be amazed how many couples end up in legal battles because they didn't clarify things up front. Owen, I said quietly, your father and I aren't getting married. We're simply sharing a household. I don't see any reason why we need to disclose our complete financial situations to each other, let alone sign legal documents about it. But don't you think Dad has a right to know if you're living together? I looked at Gerald. Do you feel you have a right to know the details of my bank accounts? He looked uncomfortable. Helen, I trust you. I don't need to see your financial statements. Dad, Owen said sharply, that's exactly the kind of thinking that gets people in trouble. You're too trusting. Owen, Gerald said, his voice firm now, I think you need to drop this. Owen left the next morning. He barely said goodbye to me. In August, both sons came to visit. They took Gerald out for lunch without inviting me, which was fine. I had errands to run anyway. But when I came back to the house earlier than expected, I could hear them in Gerald's home office. The door was slightly open. Dad, you're being naive, that was Owen's voice. I'm not being naive. I'm respecting her privacy. She sold a business for probably over $1 million. She's got money, Dad, significant money. And she's living in your house, paying almost nothing, and you have no idea what she's planning. Philip, this time. Planning? She's not planning anything. She's a good woman who's been through a lot. How do you know what she's been through? Owen's voice was rising. You've known her less than a year. Have you met her daughters? Have you seen any evidence of this successful business? Maybe she's lying. Maybe she's broke and looking for someone to take care of her. I almost laughed. It was so exactly backwards. Or maybe, Philip added, she's got plenty of money and she's waiting for you to wife her up so she can get half of your pension and this house when you die. That's enough. Gerald's voice was steel. Both of you. Helen is not some gold digger. She's a professional woman who built her own career. She's not after my money. I don't have enough money to be worth scheming over. Dad, Owen said more gently now, we're just trying to protect you. We've seen this before. Older men, recently widowed, lonely. They meet someone who seems nice, who seems genuine, and before they know it, they've signed over power of attorney, or changed their will, or drained their accounts. We love you. We don't want to see you get hurt. I appreciate your concern, Gerald said, but I'm a grown man. I can make my own decisions, and I've decided to trust Helen. I'd appreciate it if you'd respect that. There was silence. Then Philip said, "Have you at least updated your will to make sure Owen and I are still the primary beneficiaries?" "My will is fine. It was updated after your mother passed. Everything is clear. But you should review it with Helen in the picture now. Make sure the language protects your assets from any claims she might make." I'd heard enough. I walked in loudly, making sure they knew I was coming. All three men looked up. "Everything all right?" I asked pleasantly. "Fine," Owen said shortly. "We were just having a family discussion." "Good," I said. "Gerald, I'm going to head back to my condo for a few days. I have some things to take care of there." I left that evening. I needed space to think, because what I'd heard wasn't just concern, it was resentment. They resented that their father had found someone, that he was happy, that there was a woman in his life who might, in their minds, threaten their inheritance. The inheritance that consisted of a modest house and a teacher's pension. I almost told Gerald everything then, almost sat him down and explained that I had more money in my investment accounts than his entire estate was worth, that I wasn't after his money because I had my own, that his son's concerns were not only insulting but completely misplaced. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the principle of the thing. Why should I have to prove my financial independence to anyone? Why should I have to lay out my bank statements to satisfy two grown men I barely knew? Or maybe, if I'm honest, it was self-preservation. Because there was a small, cautious voice in my head that said, if they're this concerned about protecting Gerald's modest assets, what would they do if they knew about yours? I stayed at my condo for 5 days. Gerald called every day. He apologized for his sons. He said they'd always been protective since their mother died, but that they'd crossed a line. He said he'd spoken to them sternly, and they'd agreed to back off. I went back. Things were good for a few weeks. September came. Gerald and I fell into a comfortable routine. We cooked together, watched movies, took long walks. He never brought up finances, never pressed me for information. He seemed genuinely content with what we had. But then came October. Gerald's birthday was October 12th. He turned 66. His sons came to town for a birthday dinner at a nice restaurant in the Exchange District. The meal was pleasant. Owen and Philip were on their best behavior, friendly and warm. They'd brought gifts, made toasts, told stories about Gerald's teaching days. After dinner, back at the house, Owen pulled out an envelope. "Dad, we have one more gift for you, something we've been working on for a while." Gerald opened it. Inside were legal documents. A lot of them. "What is this?" Gerald asked, flipping through pages. "It's a comprehensive estate plan," Philip said proudly. "We hired a lawyer, a good one. This sets up a family trust, updates your will, establishes power of attorney guidelines, healthcare directives, everything. We've taken care of all of it. You just need to sign." Gerald looked stunned. "Boys, I appreciate the thought, but I already have all of this." "Not like this," Owen said. "Your will was written when Mom was alive. It needs to be completely redone. This version protects your assets, makes sure the house and your pension benefits go to family, and sets up clear boundaries for any future relationships you might have." I felt my stomach drop. Future relationships? Philip had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Well, current relationships too. No offense, Helen, but these documents protect Dad from any financial complications. They make it clear that his assets are designated for his children and grandchildren. "I see," I said quietly. Gerald was reading through the documents, his face getting redder. "This says Helen would have no claim to my estate, even if we got married." "Right," Owen said. "It's a protective measure. It also says," Gerald continued, his voice tight, "that I need to get signed financial disclosures from anyone I'm in a relationship with. That I need to have them reviewed by you two before making any major financial decisions." "Dad, we're trying to help you." Gerald stood up. "Help me? You're trying to control me. You think I'm some senile old man who can't make his own decisions? Of course not, Philip said quickly. But you have to admit, you haven't exactly been thinking clearly since you met Helen. What's that supposed to mean? Owen stepped in. It means you've known her less than a year, and you've moved her into your house. You have no idea what her financial situation is. She could be broke. She could be in debt. She could be planning to marry you and take half of everything. I stood up too. I think I should leave. No, Gerald said firmly. You stay. Boys, I think you need to go. Dad, please. Just sign the documents. Let's protect what Mom and you built together. Your mother, Gerald said, his voice shaking now, would be ashamed of both of you. She taught you to trust people, to see the good in them. And here you are, treating Helen like she's some kind of criminal. We're just being realistic, Owen said. You're being paranoid and insulting. I want you both to leave. Now. They left, but not before Owen turned to me and said, I hope you're happy. You've turned our father against his own sons. After they were gone, Gerald apologized profusely. He was embarrassed, angry at them, upset that they'd ruined his birthday. I comforted him, told him it was fine, that I understood they were just worried. But I was shaken. Because their plan was clear now. They wanted Gerald's assets locked down tight. They wanted to make sure that no matter what happened with me, I'd get nothing. Which would have been perfectly reasonable, except for the fact that I didn't want anything. I'd never wanted anything. November came. The tension with his sons remained. They called less frequently. When they did call, Gerald kept the conversations short. He didn't tell them I was there when I was. He'd started protecting me from them, which somehow made me feel worse. On November 18th, Gerald went to a doctor's appointment, just a routine checkup. I stayed home, working on a quilt I'd started. Around 11 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Helen? It's Philip. Philip, how are you? I'm fine. Listen, I wanted to apologize for what happened at Dad's birthday. Owen and I talked, and we realized we came on too strong. I appreciate that, I said cautiously. We were wondering if you'd be willing to meet with us, just the three of us. We'd like to clear the air, maybe start over. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, just coffee, 1 hour. We'll meet somewhere public, neutral. We just want to explain where we're coming from. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a Starbucks on Pembina Highway the next day. Owen and Philip were already there, sitting at a corner table with a third person, a woman I didn't recognize. Helen, thank you for coming, Owen said, standing. This is Jennifer Kowalski. She's an estate lawyer we've worked with before. Warning bells clanged in my head. I don't understand. I thought this was just coffee. It is, Philip said quickly. Jennifer just happens to be here, we thought. Since you're experienced in accounting, you might appreciate having a legal perspective on some things. I should have left then, but curiosity got the better of me. I sat down. Jennifer was smooth, professional. She talked about the importance of estate planning, about protecting assets in blended families, about the complications that could arise when people cohabitated without clear legal arrangements. What we're suggesting, she said, pulling out yet another folder, is a simple cohabitation agreement. It would protect both Helen and Gerald. It would outline who owns what, who's responsible for what, and what happens if the relationship ends or if one party passes away. And why would I sign this? I asked. For your own protection, Jennifer said. Right now, if something happened to Gerald, you'd have no legal claim to anything. You'd potentially be evicted from his house with nowhere to go. This agreement could actually protect you. I looked at Owen and Philip, or it could protect your father's assets from me. That too, Owen admitted. Look, Helen, we need to be honest with each other. You sold a business. You must have received a significant sum. Our father has a house and a pension. We just want to make sure everyone's clear about who owns what. And if I refuse to sign? Philip leaned forward. Then we'd have to question your motives. Why wouldn't you want clarity? What are you trying to hide? I smiled. I couldn't help it, because the absurdity of it all suddenly hit me. These two men, so convinced that I was after their father's money, had no idea that I could buy his house 3 times over with cash. Let me ask you something, I said. Have you considered that I might not need your father's money? That I might have my own? Of course you do, Jennifer said smoothly. And that's exactly what this agreement would protect. Your separate property would remain yours, and Gerald's would remain his. Except, I said, reading through the document she'd slid across the table, this Section 4 requires full financial disclosure from both parties. Bank statements, investment accounts, retirement funds, property ownership, everything. Standard, Jennifer said. No, I said. It's a fishing expedition. You want to know what I have? We have a right to know, Owen said. Our father is in a relationship with you. We have a right to protect him. I stood up. You have a right to nothing. I'm not signing anything, and I'm not disclosing anything to you, your brother, or your lawyer. If your father wants to know about my finances, he can ask me himself. But he won't, because he's not like you. I left before they could respond. I didn't tell Gerald about the meeting. I told myself it was because I didn't want to cause more problems between him and his sons. But really, I was starting to feel trapped. Every direction I turned, his sons were there, pushing, probing, trying to get information. December came. The holiday season should have been joyful, but there was this underlying tension in everything. Owen and Philip called less, which should have been a relief but somehow felt ominous, like they were planning something. On December 15th, Gerald and I were having dinner when he got a call from Owen. He put it on speaker. As he'd started doing so, I could hear that he wasn't hiding anything from me. Dad, Philip and I wanted to invite you to Calgary for Christmas. Just the family. The kids would love to see Grandpa. That sounds nice, Gerald said. Let me check with Helen about our plans. Actually, Dad, we were thinking just you this year. You know, a guy's thing. You haven't spent Christmas with just us since Mom died. Gerald looked at me. I shrugged, trying to seem unbothered. That's fine, I mouthed. I don't know, Owen. Helen and I were planning to spend the holidays together. Dad, please. It's been years. We miss you. The kids miss you. Just this once. Helen will understand. Won't you, Helen? He was clearly aware I could hear. Of course, I said. Family is important. Gerald agreed to go. He'd fly out on December 23rd, come back on the 27th. It was fine. I'd spend Christmas with my daughters. They were both coming to Winnipeg anyway. But on December 20th, something happened that changed everything. I was at my condo, collecting some winter clothes I'd left there. Gerald was at his house. My phone rang. It was Sarah, my oldest daughter. Mom, I just got the weirdest call. What kind of call? From a man named Philip. He said he was your partner's son. He had some questions about you. My blood ran cold. What kind of questions? He wanted to know about your business, about when you sold it, about your finances. He said he was trying to help his father with some estate planning and needed to verify some information. Mom, I didn't tell him anything, but it was really strange. How did he even get my number? I don't know, I said. But I did know. Gerald had mentioned to his sons that my daughters were coming for Christmas. He'd probably mentioned their names, and Philip worked at a bank. He had resources to find people. There's more, Mom. He called Michelle, too. She told him to, quote, take a flying leap. You know Michelle. I thanked Sarah, told her everything was fine, hung up, and sat down. My hands were shaking. They'd contacted my daughters. They'd crossed a line I hadn't even known existed. I called Gerald. We need to talk. Now. He came to my condo within 20 minutes. I told him everything. The meeting with his sons and the lawyer, the cohabitation agreement, and now, the calls to my daughters. He was horrified. Helen, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I'll call them right now and... No, I said. Don't call them. I need you to listen to me very carefully. And then, for the first time, I told him the truth. I told him about the sale of my business. I told him about the $3, $2 million, about my investment accounts, about the fact that I had more money than he'd ever see in his lifetime. I told him I'd kept it private not because I was hiding anything from him, but because I'd learned over 34 years of hard work that the moment people know you have money, everything changes. He stared at me. $3 million? Give or take. plus my retirement accounts, plus my condo. Gerald, I'm not poor. I've never been poor. I didn't need to move into your house for financial reasons. I did it because I care about you." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Not a happy laugh, a bitter, ironic laugh. "My sons think you're after my money, and you've got more money than all of us combined." "Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered?" He thought about that. "No. I don't think it would have." "Exactly. I didn't tell you because it doesn't matter. It doesn't change who we are to each other. But your sons have been harassing me for months, trying to protect your assets from me when they should have been worried about the opposite." Gerald canceled his trip to Calgary. He called Owen and Philip and told them what I'd told him. I don't know exactly what was said, but he was on the phone for over 2 hours. When he came back to my condo, he looked exhausted. "They don't believe you," he said. "They think you're lying to me. They want proof, bank statements, investment documents." Owen actually said if she really has that much money, she'd have no problem proving it. "I'm not proving anything to them," I said. "I know. I told them that. I told them it was none of their business. I told them they'd been completely out of line contacting your daughters." Owen hung up on me. Philip said I was making the biggest mistake of my life. We spent Christmas with my daughters. Sarah and Michelle met Gerald properly for the first time. Michelle, protective as always, took me aside. "Mom, are you sure about this guy? His sons sound like real pieces of work." "His sons are not him," I said. "He's been nothing but respectful and kind. But they're his family. They're always going to be in the picture." She was right, of course, and that was the problem I couldn't solve. In January, things got worse. Owen hired a private investigator. I found out because the PI was clumsy. He followed me from my condo to Gerald's house, then to a coffee shop where I met a friend. The friend, retired RCMP, noticed him immediately and confronted him in the parking lot. The PI admitted he'd been hired to investigate me, to find out about my finances, my background, any criminal history, any debts. Owen wanted proof that I was lying about the money, or proof that I was a scammer if I wasn't lying. Gerald was furious when I told him. He called Owen and threatened legal action for harassment. Owen claimed he was just protecting his father. The conversation ended with Gerald telling Owen not to contact him again until he was ready to apologize to me. We didn't hear from either son for 3 weeks. Then, on February 8th, a letter arrived, certified mail, from Jennifer Kowalski, the estate lawyer. It was addressed to both Gerald and me. The letter stated that Owen and Philip, as potential beneficiaries of Gerald's estate, had concerns about his mental competency and his ability to make sound financial decisions in his current emotional state. It suggested that Gerald undergo a cognitive assessment. It hinted that if he refused, they might pursue legal guardianship. I watched Gerald read it, watched his hands shake, watched tears come to his eyes. "They think I'm senile," he whispered. "They think you've brainwashed me." "They're desperate," I said. "They've realized they can't get to me, so they're trying to get to you. I should call them. I should fix this." "Gerald," I said gently, "you can't fix this. They've shown you who they are. They're not going to stop until they get what they want, which is me out of your life and control over your assets." He looked at me. "What do we do?" And that's when I made a decision, a hard decision, but the right one. "I think I need to move back to my condo. Permanently." "What? No. Helen, you can't let them drive you away." "I'm not letting them drive me away. I'm choosing to protect what we have left. Gerald, as long as I'm living in your house, they're going to keep pushing. They're going to keep escalating. Eventually, they might actually succeed in having you declared incompetent, or they'll cause you so much stress that you get sick. I won't be responsible for that." "So they win?" "No, we win, because we get to keep our relationship without their interference. I'll have my space, you'll have yours. We can still see each other, spend time together, but we remove the thing they're fighting against." He wanted to argue, but he knew I was right. I moved back to my condo in mid-February. We still saw each other 4 or 5 times a week, but the pressure lifted. Owen and Philip, seeing that I was no longer living in their father's house, backed off. The threats of competency hearings disappeared. The hostile letters stopped. Gerald and I found a new rhythm. We were together when we wanted to be, separate when we needed to be, and the money, my money, stayed my business. In March, I did something I'd been considering for a while. I updated my own will. I left half of my estate to my daughters, as planned. The other half, I designated for a scholarship fund at the University of Manitoba for women starting businesses. I set it up through a lawyer Owen and Philip would never know about. When I die, whenever that is, they'll never know what I had. They'll never know what they spent months trying to get their hands on, and there's a certain satisfaction in that. I'm 63 now. Gerald is 67. We're still together. We're still happy. His sons have grudgingly accepted me, though we maintain a careful distance. They call him regularly now, but they don't ask about me. When they visit, I make myself scarce. Sarah asked me recently if I regretted not marrying Gerald, not combining our lives more fully. I thought about it. No, I said. I spent 34 years building something that was mine. I'm not going to spend my retirement defending it. That seems lonely, she said. It's not lonely. It's peaceful. There's a difference. Looking back now, I can see the pattern I missed at first. Every question Owen and Philip asked, every document they presented, every meeting they arranged, it was all designed to get me to reveal my finances. They genuinely believed I was a threat to their inheritance. They couldn't fathom that I might not need anything from their father. And maybe that's the most important lesson I learned. When people are focused on protecting what they have, they can't see what they're destroying in the process. Owen and Philip were so busy trying to safeguard their father's modest estate that they nearly ruined their relationship with him. They were so convinced I was a gold digger that they never stopped to consider I might be something else entirely, a woman who'd built her own gold mine. If I could go back, would I tell Gerald the truth from the beginning? Maybe. It might have saved us some trouble, but it also might have changed everything. Money has a way of doing that. The moment someone knows you have it, you're never quite sure if they're with you or for what you have. Gerald never needed to know what I was worth. He loved me without knowing. And that, in the end, was worth more than any amount in any account. So here's what I want you to take away from my story, because I learned these lessons the hard way. First, protect your assets in any new relationship, especially later in life. That doesn't mean being secretive or dishonest, but it does mean maintaining appropriate boundaries. Keep separate accounts. Consult with your own financial and legal advisors before combining anything. Don't rush into legal entanglements just because you care about someone. Second, watch for red flags when family members start asking detailed questions about your finances. Questions about estate planning, wills, trusts, beneficiaries, these should come from you, not from your partner's children. If someone you've just met starts pressing for financial information, that's a warning sign. Trust your instincts. Third, understand that adult children often become protective of their parents' assets, especially if there's been a recent loss like a spouse dying. Their concerns might come from love, but they can quickly become controlling and invasive. Set boundaries early. Make it clear that your financial affairs are your own business. Fourth, you don't owe anyone access to your financial information. Not your partner's children, not distant relatives, not friends. Your money is your private business. You worked for it. You earned it. You get to decide who knows about it and who doesn't. And finally, the most important lesson, financial independence is its own form of protection. If I'd been dependent on Gerald financially, his sons could have used that against me. They could have pushed him to leave me, knowing I'd be in a difficult position. But because I had my own resources, I had choices. I could walk away if I needed to. I could maintain my own home. I wasn't trapped. That's what 34 years of 70-hour weeks bought me. Not just money, freedom. Would my story have ended differently if I'd told everyone about the $3.2 million from the start? Probably. Owen and Philip might have approached me differently, or they might have been even more aggressive, seeing me as a bigger threat. I'll never know. What I do know is this. I'm comfortable. I'm secure. I'm in a relationship with a good man who loves me for who I am, not what I have. And I sleep soundly at night, knowing that everything I built is protected. That's enough for me. If you're in a similar situation, if you're older, if you've built something valuable, if you're entering a new relationship and facing suspicious family members, remember this. You don't have to justify your choices to anyone. You don't have to prove your worth or explain your finances. You just have to protect what's yours and make sure you're making decisions that keep you safe and secure. I was smart. I kept my business to myself. And when Gerald's sons came looking for gold, they found a woman who already had her own mine. They just never knew it.